They said she was just the cleaning lady. That's what they wanted everyone to believe. But while the heiress inherited her father's fashion empire, this woman inherited something far more valuable: his secrets, his loyalty, and the one thing money couldn't buy: his love. And she was about to cash in. If you love stories where karma hits harder than betrayal, hit that like button right now. And stay until the end. Trust me, you won't see this twist coming. Subscribe for more untold stories that'll leave you speechless. Now let me tell you about the day I stopped being invisible. My name is Diana Beaumont, and for 8 years, I scrubbed the floors of Whitmore Fashion House. I polished the glass doors that executives walked through without ever seeing my reflection. I emptied trash bins filled with half-eaten salads that cost more than my daily wage. I worked the night shift, the early morning shift, the hours when the building was supposed to be empty. And that's exactly how they liked it. Me there, but never really there. A ghost in their perfect, pristine world. Catherine Whitmore owned that world. 28 years old, blonde hair always perfectly styled, wearing clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. She inherited Whitmore Fashion House when her father Leonard died, and she wore that inheritance like a crown. The press loved her. Charity galas, Fashion Week appearances, interviews where she talked about empowering women while treating me like furniture. She'd drop her coffee cup right in front of me and walk away, knowing I'd clean it up. She'd schedule me to work during company celebrations, making sure I served drinks to people who looked straight through me. But here's what Catherine didn't know. Here's what none of them knew. I wasn't just cleaning. I was watching, learning, remembering. And I was in love with the man she thought she owned. Christopher Dane was Whitmore's creative director. Talented, brilliant, with these sad gray eyes that seemed to carry the weight of compromise. Everyone assumed he'd marry Catherine. She certainly acted like he belonged to her, dragging him to events, showing him off like an expensive watch. But 3 years ago, on a late night when he was working on a collection, and I was cleaning the design studio, something happened. He spoke to me, not at me, to me. "You're here late," he said, looking up from his sketches. Most people never acknowledged my presence. I was so startled, I almost dropped my cleaning supplies. "I'm always here late, sir." "Christopher," he corrected. "And you don't have to call me sir. What's your name?" "Diana." That was the beginning. Those late nights became our secret world. He'd work on designs, I'd clean, and we'd talk, really talk, about art, about poetry, about dreams we'd abandoned, and hopes we still carried. He told me about growing up poor, about his mother's cancer, about feeling trapped in golden handcuffs. I told him about my love for literature, about how I'd wanted to be a writer before life got in the way. Somewhere between midnight conversations and stolen glances, friendship became something deeper, something dangerous, something beautiful. We fell in love in the margins of other people's lives, in parking garages and storage rooms, in moments snatched between obligations and expectations. He wanted to run away with me, to leave everything behind. But Catherine had paid for his mother's cancer treatment, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was chained by gratitude, imprisoned by debt. "Love shouldn't feel like a cage," I told him once, holding his face in my hands. "Then why does freedom feel impossible?" he whispered back. Everything changed the day of Leonard Whitmore's will reading. I was there, of course, not as family, but as staff. They needed someone to serve refreshments, to be useful and invisible. I stood in the back of that mahogany-paneled conference room while the lawyer read Leonard's will. Catherine inherited everything: the company, the properties, the wealth. But there was a clause that made her face go tight. She had to marry within 1 year, or her shares would transfer to something called the Beaumont Foundation. Nobody knew what that meant. The lawyer said it was a charitable trust Leonard had established. Catherine's eyes swept the room and landed on Christopher. "Well," she announced, her voice sharp as crystal, "I suppose we should set a wedding date, darling." Christopher said nothing. He just looked at the floor, and I watched the life drain from his face. From that moment, Catherine became relentless. She planned an extravagant wedding, scheduled for 6 months out. She paraded Christopher everywhere, her hand always possessively on his arm. She talked about their future, their children, their empire, never asking what he wanted, because in her world, what she wanted was the only thing that mattered. Christopher and I still found our moments, but they were desperate now. Frantic kisses in darkened hallways, whispered promises that felt like lies because we both knew the truth. He couldn't leave, not with his mother's medical bills hanging over him, not with Catherine holding every string. Then came the engagement party. Catherine made sure I was scheduled to work that night, made sure I wore my uniform while serving champagne to guests in designer gowns, made sure I understood my place. I spent 4 hours being invisible, then another 3 hours cleaning up after people who'd never remember my face. Christopher found me at 3 in the morning, crying in a supply closet. He didn't say anything, just held me, and then he kissed me like a drowning man, gasping for air. We didn't hear the footsteps, didn't see Catherine's assistant Greta watching from the doorway. 2 days later, Catherine called me to her office. I'd never been in her office before. It was all white and glass and cold perfection. She sat behind her desk like a queen on a throne, and she smiled at me. That smile told me everything I needed to know. "Diana," she said, my name dripping with false sweetness, "we need to talk about your future here." She'd planted evidence, claimed I'd been stealing. Small things, jewelry from her office, petty cash. All lies, but with Greta as her witness, who would believe me? The cleaning lady versus the heiress. "Here's what's going to happen," Catherine continued. "You're going to quit. Today. You're going to leave this city and never contact Christopher again. If you do, I'll have you arrested. You'll go to prison. Do you understand?" I understood. I understood that she thought she could erase me, make me disappear like I'd never existed. I had 48 hours to decide. I spent that night in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about running, about giving up, about letting Christopher go, because maybe that's what love meant, sacrifice. But then I remembered something. All those years of night shifts, all those hours alone in the building. I'd had access to everything, including Leonard Whitmore's private office, the one with the locked filing cabinet that wasn't actually locked if you knew how to jimmy it with a letter opener. I wasn't just cleaning. I was reading documents, letters, files Leonard kept hidden. And I discovered the truth. Leonard Whitmore had loved someone before his wife, a black woman named Grace Beaumont, my mother. They met when she worked as a seamstress in his factory. He fell in love with her, real love, the kind that changes you. But in the 1990s, a white man loving a black woman, especially someone of Leonard's status, it was unthinkable to his family. They forced him to marry someone appropriate, someone white, wealthy, connected, Catherine's mother. But Leonard never stopped loving Grace. He supported her in secret. And when she got pregnant with me, he was overjoyed. He wanted to leave his wife, claim his child. But Grace died in childbirth, and Leonard, he broke. He couldn't abandon his wife and infant daughter, Catherine. But he couldn't abandon me either, so he created a shadow life, paid for my education through scholarships, got me a job at his company, kept me close, but hidden, just like he'd kept my mother. All those years, Leonard was watching me, protecting me, and planning. The Beaumont Foundation wasn't a charity, it was me. Leonard had structured the will so that if Catherine married, she kept everything. But if she failed to marry within the year, 50% of the company went to the foundation, which meant it went to me, his hidden daughter, his secret heir. He left me everything I needed, documents proving my parentage, letters to my mother filled with love and regret, photos of them together, and the trust papers locked in a safe deposit box. He'd given me the key years ago, disguised as a Christmas bonus. I'd never known what it opened until I read his private files. Leonard Whitmore had spent 20 years setting up the most elaborate inheritance plan in history, and I was his failsafe, his redemption, his way of finally choosing love over fear. When I told Christopher everything, he couldn't speak for 5 minutes. "You're his daughter," he finally whispered. "You own half the company." "If she doesn't marry," I corrected. "If she fails the condition." Christopher looked at me with something like awe. "You could destroy her, right now. Just reveal the truth." But I didn't want destruction. I wanted justice. "There's a difference. I'm giving you a choice," I told him. "Marry her. I'll disappear. You'll be safe. Your mother will be cared for. And you'll never see me again." Or quote. Or we tell the truth, all of it, and let the chips fall. Christopher took my hands. "I'd rather have nothing with you than everything with her." So we made a plan. The wedding day was obscene. 300 guests at a historic mansion. Press everywhere. Flowers that cost more than cars. Catherine in a dress that probably required its own insurance policy. I wasn't invited, of course. I was on duty, managing the venue staff, staying invisible. I watched Christopher walk down the aisle, looking like a man approaching the gallows. Watched Catherine's triumphant smile. Watched the guests whisper and take photos, documenting what they thought was a fairy tale. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved." I stood in the back, wearing my supervisor uniform, holding a folder that contained my entire life. "If anyone has any reason why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." Christopher's voice rang out clear and strong. "I do." The gasps were instantaneous. Catherine's face went from shock to rage in seconds. "I can't do this," Christopher said, turning to face her. "I don't love you, Catherine. I never did. I'm sorry, but I can't marry you." Catherine's mask shattered. "You'll have nothing," she screamed. "I'll destroy you. I'll ruin you. You'll never work again." "I already have everything I need," Christopher said quietly. That's when I started walking. Down that white carpet, past the shocked guests, past the cameras. I'd changed out of my uniform. I wore a simple dress, nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I carried that folder like a shield. "My name is Diana Beaumont," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Leonard Whitmore was my father." The silence was absolute. I handed the folder to Mr. Peterson, the family lawyer, who'd been standing beside the officiant. He opened it, read for a moment, and his eyes went wide. "These documents are legitimate," he announced. "Ms. Beaumont is Leonard Whitmore's daughter, and according to the trust established in his will, she owns 50% of Whitmore Fashion House." Catherine lunged at me, actually lunged, like some feral thing. Security caught her, but not before she started screaming. "You were the help. You're nobody. You're nothing. This company is mine." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time as her equal. "I was invisible because you refused to see me," I said calmly. "That was your mistake, Catherine, not mine." Her rage was spectacular. Years of practiced grace dissolved into pure ugliness. She screamed racist slurs, threw things, revealed exactly who she was in front of 300 witnesses and a dozen cameras. The press caught every moment, every hateful word, every bit of venom. The perfect heiress, exposed. Within 24 hours, the footage was everywhere. Catherine became a cautionary tale about privilege and prejudice. Sponsors dropped Whitmore Fashion House. Board members demanded her resignation. She'd created her own destruction, one cruel choice at a time. We bought her out, gave her a settlement to walk away. She took it and vanished from public life, her reputation in ashes. That was 6 months ago. Now, Christopher and I run Whitmore Fashion House together. We've rebranded, ethical fashion, fair wages, inclusive marketing, models of every color, size, and background. We hire from communities others ignore. We pay people what they're worth. The company is thriving in ways it never did under Catherine's vanity projects. But the real victory? It's not the business. It's not the money or the power or the vindication. It's this. I'm sitting in the design studio on a late night, just like old times. Christopher is sketching a new collection. I'm writing, finally writing, the stories I always wanted to tell. And we're together. No more hiding. No more secrets. I'm wearing a simple ring on my left hand. We got married last month, just the two of us and his mother, at a courthouse. No press, no spectacle, just love. Christopher looks up from his work and smiles at me. That sad look in his eyes is gone. He's free. We both are. People ask me if I feel guilty, if I feel like I stole something from Catherine. But here's the truth. You can't steal what was never theirs to take. Leonard Whitmore left me an inheritance, yes. But the real gift was the truth, the knowledge that I was seen, loved, and valued by my father, even if he couldn't claim me publicly. And Catherine, she inherited a company, but she lost everything that mattered because she never understood that people aren't possessions. Love isn't ownership. And cruelty always comes with a receipt. I was invisible for years, but I was never nothing. I was patient. I was watching. And when the moment came, I was ready. The best revenge isn't rage, it's rising. And I rose. The heiress owned the company, but I owned what she could never buy, steal, or command. A love freely given, a legacy earned, and a future I built with my own hands. They thought I was just the cleaning lady. Turns out I was the one who cleaned house. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their time is coming. And subscribe, because karma's just getting started. And we've got more stories where justice isn't just served, it's savored. What would you have done in Diana's position? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, remember, the people you overlook might just be the ones who change everything.